So Prue, if you want to call the roll.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Chair Brian Caffarelli,
I am finally here. Thank you.
Vice Chair Chris Brogan.
Here.
I know Marlene is going to sign on a little bit later. Jay Gross.
Here.
Pamela Iacono.
Here.
John Matola.
I'm here.
And John Wayne.
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. And let's go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag.
The United States of
America.
To the republic. Which
stands
one nation.
Under God. Indivisible. With liberty. Justice for all.
All right, moving right along. I trust that everyone has received a copy or seen online a copy of the minutes from the March 10th meeting. Are there any comments on those minutes?
I have one
Okay.
comment. For the special meeting, the record should note that I called the meeting and I led the Pledge of Allegiance, and that Chairman Caffarelli was absent from that meeting.
Certainly was, and you did a good job. I watched it.
Thank you. I didn't want to lose the record of my moment in the sun here.
We can arrange for more.
That's quite all right.
It was a great recitation of the pledge.
That is good. Yeah. Sometimes yeah. Okay. So if we could amend the minutes to note those changes. Can I get a motion? Are there any other amendments or changes to the minutes? So I will entertain a motion to approve the March 10 minutes with Mr. Brogan's changes. John Wayne's and moved it and seconded by John Matola. All those in favor? Any?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the minutes are adopted. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is the presentation of the Governance Council governance model by our esteemed counsel, Steve Mednick. So I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'm going to do is walk us through these articles, and you're going to see this presentation covers a number of articles in the charter, including the referendum article. And I made a judgment call, and you can reverse it to move the referendum provisions into the RTM section, since the referenda all are triggered by actions of the RTM. I thought that was a logical place to put it as part of the legislative process. What I tried to do with this document, because we did not have a consensus, a specific consensus. I think we had some broad consensus issues that the commission agreed upon in a very broad sense. I took pretty good notes to try to capture most of the things that we were talking about. And you'll see in here that I've made some judgment calls that you can lay entirely at my feet if people in the community get restive about any of the comments. You could always blame me, and I'll only be back periodically for reunions, and no one will be able to find me. So be my guest. You can blame me for all of this. So starting in Article 2, what I've tried to do, if you remember, Article 2 is the section where they had all of these charts and all of these lists. And I have to say that it was a difficult, they're difficult lists to maneuver. And what I've tried to do is go through the article to really define who the elected officials are, how they're elected, when they're elected, what their terms are, and try to present it in some logical way. But the first thing I do is, and we did this before, it was in one of the revisions, the opening of it basically says the general statutes really govern the conduct of elections. And one of the issues I'm going to talk to Jim Baldwin about not necessarily tonight. You'll see I have a couple of shaded areas that I did not touch, is I want to really figure out whether the town clerk and the registrars use some of the provisions in this charter or whether they rely on the general statutes. That'll be the last step that I need to take with regard to with this section. Section 2.2 defines the electors, which is also a term that's defined in Title 9. Subsection B is a recitation of a provision that was in another part of the document. Again, since it involved being an elector in order to be eligible to run for town office, I thought it made sense to put it in the section that lays out the qualifications for voting. And then the subpart C is a new provision that I'm sure that the registrars keep the lists anyhow. I thought it should be clear in the charter that they keep the lists of electors at all times so that people can check out and see how these things are done. Subpart D deals with the effect of ceasing to be an elector or resident of a district. And the general rule, which is these, I think, are both sections that are already in the charter that I simply moved into this section because, again, it deals with electors. I then, in 2.3, move into the definition of who our elected town officials are. And you'll see, I hope it came up on your copy when you printed it out. What I did is, and I want to thank Pam Iacono for helping me a little bit on this and others for helping me, is I went to the town website to try to figure out when terms started on each of the boards to try to place in the charter kind of a baseline for the terms of office. And so in A, we define who the members are. You'll see, this is the first place you're going to see a number associated with the RTM. I'll explain how I got there when we go to the RTM. I didn't change any other institutions. I do have a strike through on the Board of Selectmen because one of the assumptions I have made in this draft was that we would move toward away from the status quo. You're entitled to stay in the status quo if you want, but I made a judgment call to move away, eliminate the Board of Selectmen, and have the RTM as a more robust legislative body, and the first select woman as an executive, as the chief executive officer, which she is under law, but not truly under this charter because of the shared executive authority. The date of the elections, again, those are all currently defined. That's 2.3B in the document. But when we go through the next sections, you'll see what I did here. I basically established a baseline starting with the November 2023 election. This doesn't change anything. It just locks in the current status quo for all of the elected officials based on my review of the website. If the website is wrong, this is wrong, but I'm assuming the website is correct. And so we have the 2023 class, and it shows you who runs and for how long they run. And it then also points you to the section of the statute of the charter further on, and I'll show you how that works when we get to it, to show you where the Board of Finance is defined, where the Board of Education is defined, where Planning and Zoning is defined, so that there's an interaction between this section and the section where it's defined. Because one of the hard things to find is where the stagger was created, and I wanted to make sure that we now have in front of us very clearly the stagger that is created. So this is the class of 2023, then there's a class of 2025, and I always have a provision at the end of each class, because if you have a 2-year term, you're running in 2025 again, and you're running in 2027. So it takes you through the baselines for all the elected officials that have their terms of office defined. Subpart 4 deals with the JPs. There's no change there. I do have one question. I won't spend time on it tonight, but I will talk to Jim Baldwin about it. It talks about the JPs as provided by, in the general statutes and by ordinance. And I assume that there might be an ordinance that governs the JPs. I want to double check that before I take it out of a bold language. And then, of course, the state election, the registrar of voters runs in the state election. Subsection C has all the commencement of terms. Again, no changes there. I know Jim had some issue that he raised with regard to one of the bodies. It might have been the RTM, but right now I've maintained the status quo in that section. As you will see, the next section is the minority party representation section. I've left that shaded because let's go through all of the offices, and this may be the place where we have a discussion. I know that several members have a discussion about the terms of office and how the elections are conducted for the Board of Ed. And subpart C of 2.4 deals with that, and that's where we may ultimately have to clean it up. But I want to just run through it, and we'll come back to this either later tonight or sometime in the future. 2.5 is current language regarding a single office requirement. 2.6 are the vacancies. I have not gone through the vacancy provisions in any detail. I'll try to do that with Jim. I also want to talk to others, the town clerk, others in the town, to see whether these vacancy provisions have worked well. If they have, then they'll be here. I have no preconceptions. I mean, there's other language I can give you, but I just wanted to highlight it to make sure that you knew that it's a section I did not review thoroughly. Then you have the vacancies and resignation of the RTM. Again, I want to talk to people about that, members of the RTM, others who've served on the RTM, whether those vacancy provisions have worked. If they've worked, there's no need to change them. And then, of course, we have the section on reapportionment of voting districts, which again, I did not change in 2.7. The area that I think that may see some change, unless I am wrong about this, is 2.8 has procedures for RTM elections. And what I'm not sure of, and I will talk to the town clerk and the others who manage the election process, is to determine whether or not we actually conduct our RTM elections in accordance with the charter or whether we follow state law. I'm not sure what the legal basis would be to follow the charter, since Title IX occupies the field, unless this is all special acts. Some of it does actually go back to the special acts. I don't know if there's, taking a look here. Yeah, some of them do go back to the special acts. So the real question is, yeah, whether we follow them or not. Does anybody know? Pam, you're on the RTM.
What does anyone know if this is what we're following?
Yeah.
I know that you can petition on with the 1%. That's, yep, somebody just did that this time.
So there may be some reasons why we follow it. So I'll talk to the town clerk.
Yeah, I know that 1% thing is definitely correct. And
Right.
it was enacted as of just this past election. There was a person who did that.
Right.
And there was actually a person who did it the previous time around too, in a different district.
Okay.
But as far as like B, C, D, and the other stuff, the town clerk would know.
All right, I'll talk to the town clerk and we'll figure that out. So that then takes us to Article 3, which is the RTM. And in this section, we open up by simply asserting, and it's already in the charter, I think this is a modification or recodification of what's in the charter, is that they are the legislative body of the town. Right now, they share some legislative authority with the Board of Selectmen. Your Board of Selectmen doesn't have vast legislative authority, but there is some legislative authority, as we will see in a few moments. There's some some boards of selectmen that have an awful lot of legislative discretion, even with an RTM or especially with a town meeting. So here's what I did under composition. I know that there's strong advocates for retaining the number 40. There are some people who want to go down into the teens or lower, but mainly in the teens. I had talked about the integrity of the 10 districts at the last meeting. I did a lot of inquiry after the last meeting to try to get a feel for how critical it was. Was 10 sacrosanct? Is this something that has been here since the time of the Mayflower or a little later? And it doesn't seem that it has been here that long. And so I have a bias for odd numbered, as John Matola knows from our conversations, for odd numbered bodies. And so what I did for purposes of discussion, because I have no vote here, and I don't represent any constituencies, to come up with a number that was kind of a compromise between, in my view, between the number that you have, the 40, and a much lower number. It's closer to the 40 than it is to the 15, just about the same. And it kind of falls in between those two. And it gives it an odd number of RTM members, so you can't end up with a tie in an election. So a majority would be determined, hopefully, at the election. It would have the 9 districts, 3 candidates per district. The way I've set it up, you can have no more than 2 candidates from the majority party. No party can have more than 2 candidates, so it limits the number of people that the party can nominate, so that the election would be competitive. Both parties would nominate enough people to win the majority, but they may not win the majority if they win the majority, but one party will end up in the minority seat. So every district will have a minority party representative, kind of a mini at-large system. Waterbury has adopted the system, and I'm trying to think who else. Waterbury has adopted the system, and it's a system that recognizes majority and minority parties. There are some districts that would be strictly D districts or strictly R districts. This will make sure that every district has a representative of both parties, and it no matter what the majority is in the town. That was my rationale. That you could do another thing. You can have the same thing and have winner take all. So you can have, in a 3-person district, you could have 3 people from the Republican Party or 3 people from the Democratic Party. I wanted to present something that recognized the 2 parties, but there's no right or wrong here. I just wanted to give you a suggestion on how you might be able to do it. Under 3.2, you know what I should have done after Article 2? Should I stop after each article and ask if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman? It just occurred to me, or should I just run through everything?
I'm getting a run through everything from several people, so I agree with that.
I see that. Thank you, everybody. I apologize. I should have stopped and asked then. Subpart B is already in the charter, so there's no new addition there. Same is true, I believe, of all the remaining provisions in 3.2. It's also true in 3.3A, and then B. And what I did, the underscores are not a true red line, that's a hard red line. I wanted to show you what is in the current charter. If it says new, it's not in the current charter, but if it says it's a modification or recodification, I've left the text and I've done a hard red line. And I wanted to make clear that the moderator is elected by a vote of the majority of the RTM. And I will put it in caps because it's going to be one of the defined terms that I recommend for your definition section. I put in some new authority in subsection 1, which talks about being the presiding officer that performs, it only has the 1 vote. You have the 1 vote as the moderator. There are some bodies where moderators get a vote to break a tie as well as their own vote. But I think in most municipalities, each person has one vote. They perform such duties consistent with the office or as imposed by a majority vote of the RTM. And I know people talked about wanting to have a committee structure. I know the RTM has a committee structure, but I put a provision here that the moderator appoints the chairs and members of all committees of the RTM. I wanted to make sure somewhere in here that is clearly stated. The deputy moderators in the charter already, but again, I put the majority vote standard, and the same thing is true in E for the moderator and clerk pro tem majority vote standards. 3.4 deals with rules of procedures and committees of the RTM. You already have some language, but what I did is I added a time frame. I don't know if we ever have a problem with this, but I put a 45-day time frame that you really should get your rules in place. But if you don't, the rules of the prior RTM shall apply until the rules are adopted. A majority of the entire membership is a quorum. You right now have the declaratory statement that all RTM meetings shall be public. I expanded on that a little bit, and maybe too much, maybe too little, but it gives the members of the public a public comment session prior to. There's some typos in here. Took this from a town with a legislative council. For all RTM meetings and committee meetings as well, there should be a public component to the meetings. What I did on committees, again, already, as you'll see, the first clause exists that the RTM shall have the power to create such committees. But I added, including rules and regulations for the conduct of committees. Again, I wanted to add kind of the element of seriousness. I actually took that from Brantford, where the first selectman actually spoke to us about how they did things. Now, I have to tell you, that committee structure he talked about is not in their charter. The way they conduct meetings, I don't know if you remember, he was fairly explicit about that most of the work gets done in committee. You wouldn't know it from looking at the charter. This charter is a little clearer on that. I do have a provision in here, and of course we want to talk to people in the RTM, that says rules of procedure shall require all matters before the RTM to have been reviewed and deliberated upon by a committee prior to final plenary action by the RTM, unless passed by a vote of, unless waived. There's an allowance for a waiver because you don't want to tie the hands of a legislative body by a vote of 2/3 of the entire membership of the body, or if the matter is deemed a public emergency under Connecticut state law, the charter, or the ordinances. So that was my way of trying to strengthen the concept of the committee, because I don't think we should establish committees in the charter. We don't know what those committees should be, but I wanted to make sure that there's a clear foundation and basis for taking the committee structure seriously. Somebody gagging over my presentation? I don't know. I do have
Public, I don't know.
moderator appoints the members and chairs. I think that's repetitious. That's the problem in doing these things like this. I'll fix that. I do have a provision in here that is a new provision for your charter. I use it in other charters, and that is that each official and employee of the department of any department of the town shall assist the RTM, the committees of the RTM, in carrying out its legislative function. I thought it was important to have a charter provision that makes it clear to everybody that the legislative body does have a function and that you do have an obligation to cooperate with that function. The next section, again, is responsive to a number of comments by the public, people who've testified here, and by many of you, is, and and the assumption of this provision is the town attorney is the attorney for the entire town. And so the court of first resort, if you need legal assistance, is to ask the town attorney. If there are assistant town attorneys, he or she may assign a particular assistant. I think that's been done in the past. If there are no assistants and the town attorney isn't available, then you can go outside for counsel on matters. I have not set up a structure where there is a permanently assigned attorney. I think I've mentioned this before. I am counsel to the legislative body in Hamden, and I am not full-time, and it costs money when they bring me in. And so I always encourage the legislative body to run things through the town attorney, and she has a couple of assistants, and come to me if there's conflicts, or come to me if they don't trust the town attorney on the given matter, which could be a political judgment. That's kind of what I set up here, so that they do need to talk to the town attorney if they go out for outside counsel, but for the sole purpose of determining whether or not the outside lawyer has a conflict of interest with the town. You do not want to hire an attorney who has a lawsuit against the town and may be in a place to get valuable information without discovery. We don't want to give an attorney that ability. And I think that the consult would be to make sure there's no ethical or positional conflicts and things like that. And there should be in the budget an annual town budget fund for a line in the budget for legal services. So this mandates that it be in the budget, and it also gives the council the ability, and I put without resort to the Board of Finance during the course of the year if a transfer is required. We can talk about that. John's on the Board of Finance, and we can talk about whether that's a sensible procedure or whether there's another way to do that. But I wanted to just kind of set up the principle without setting up a bureaucracy in the body. Again, you're not a large town, not a large city. I mean, in Connecticut you are, the 11th largest municipality in Connecticut. But I think it gives you more flexibility. I did this similarly for Middletown, which is even smaller than Fairfield last year, and it seems to be working thus far. I put in a parliamentarian. I did not put a footnote. I'll have to fix that. I don't know if it's ever been needed, but it's a may. So the moderator may appoint a parliamentarian. Whether that's necessary or not, I do not know, but I just wanted to give you that option. When we get to the meetings, the RTM didn't change much. I just added the majority vote standard. Special and emergency meetings gave the moderator the authority to call special meetings and emergency meetings. We'll talk about emergencies in a moment. I didn't write anything about it, but I think I have a question to see whether we want to do something on emergencies in the charter, since we don't. Notice, I'm working on a meeting notice definition. That's why it's not numbered. It's sitting at the top 1/3 of the page. I think we have a notice provision in the budget section for the definitions. I want to make sure they all work together. I just wanted to isolate that. So the general powers of the, these are all new. And what I did is I took a look at other communities, roughly your size, to see what powers they had for legislative bodies. What do legislative bodies do? Because I thought if we are trying to make a more robust legislative function for the RTM, we should lay out what they do. Enact ordinances, create or abolish boards and commissions, departments. They have the ability to do those things in most communities. They deliberate on the budget, which is confined to Article 10. So there's a reference to Article 10. They approve the issuance of bonds or notes for the purpose of incurring indebtedness. They contract if they need so, like for legal services or other things, for legislative services. I've placed in here a concept, the right of rejection. when you get to the section on the first selectman, you're going to see, selectwoman, you're going to see that she now has all the appointment authority for all boards and commissions that are not elected. Currently, the Board of Selectmen has a number of those appointments. And so what I've created here, because it's going to be a huge volume of boards and commissions, and I don't think that I think right now, as I read the charter, there may be ordinance board or commissions that maybe go to the RTM. The only commission that I see that goes to the RTM is the Ethics Commission. There may be one other. But so what I did here, something I did in Waterbury when they were transitioning from a weak legislative body to a stronger legislative body, was to create a right of rejection with a supermajority. So the mayor will notify the RTM of his or her appointments, and you will have to act as a legislative body, or the RTM will have to act within 45 days of submission if they want to reject. If they have no issue with the appointment, nothing further occurs. But they have a right to reject, and it's up to 45 days. You could make it 30 days. You could make it 15 days. You can make it 60 days. But I wanted to establish the concept of the balance between the legislative and executive body without overburdening the legislative body. They also have the ability to approve leasing, sale, or acquisition of real property. Again, that is a legislative function because you're committing the funds of the community, and only the legislative body ultimately can do that. Sometimes that's shared with other bodies. Selectmen may retain that power, but if there's no selectmen, then it is a reasonable power. They approve contracts set forth in the executive session. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Again, that's mainly multi-year contracts or contracts that have not gone over a certain amount, that have not gone through a procurement process. But particularly multi-year contracts really require some form of legislative approval. And then they would have the ability to approve or reject collective bargaining agreements under MIRA in the state. The next, and there's more you could throw in there. You could reduce it down. I just wanted to give you a range. And the towns that I was looking at, just for your, I tried to stay away from big cities, but I have Darien, Danbury, Bristol, Newtown, Hamden as some of my sources, Brantford, and there's one tiny town I went to, Waterford or someplace, where I found an interesting provision. So I tried to make sure that we were keeping things proportional to the concept of a town government. The next section is just a placeholder, and Jim sent me the procedures for how a bill becomes a law. You can have a very detailed provision in a charter, or you could have a more advisory provision in the charter, but you want to hit the salient points: how a bill is introduced, how it's acted upon, when it comes out of the, you may want to throw the committee process into it, when it comes out of the RTM, what is the role of the Board of Selectmen, of the first select woman, and we would be adding the veto authority. Right now, there is no veto authority. The only veto authority would be a petition, as I understand it. So this would add to that dynamic of creating kind of a legislative and executive function, just taking one step in that direction. So we will talk about that and determine whether that is something that is useful and necessary. The public notice is currently in the charter, and the publication and posting of adopted legislation would be new, just to make sure that you get into the habit of posting ordinances. You may do it already, but I thought it would not be a bad thing to have in the charter. Section 3.6, there's some language in here because I pulled a couple of things and just put them there. That's not meant to be anything more than a placeholder. I wanted to see whether or not there'd be an interest, and we should talk to people
Mhm.
about this, maybe the first selectman, selectwoman, to see whether or not how we deal with public emergencies and emergency funding, emergency legislation, et cetera, and whether we should have some standard in the charter. There doesn't appear to be a standard in the charter at the present time. 3.7, you'll all recognize, is currently Article 12, or whatever it's an Article 12 in my restructured charter, but it's the referendum section. And you can continue to call it referendum. It smells more like, to me, a petition for overrule. If that's a political problem, call it a referendum. But if you don't have an issue with it, I put in the term petition for overrule. You could flip it around, call it a referendum, and in parenthetical, get the people used to the idea that it's a petition for overrule, because these are petitions that come after there's legislative action. And we'll have to figure out, if we do have a veto authority, how that works. If the mayor vetoes, it doesn't go anywhere. But if the mayor lets it go into law, that's when the final action would take place, and the petition would key off of the final action of the mayor, or the override, if there's an override by the council. And that's pretty much it. 3.8 is the appeal to the Board of Finance, which goes to the budget section, which we talked about a few months ago. I did throw a couple of provisions in here that I thought were important, especially where we are in a new era. And I saw this in a couple charters, and I thought it made a lot of sense. The RTM shall not diminish by ordinance, vote, or otherwise the powers and duties vested in the first selectman by this charter. If the power is a charter authority, a charter power, and the RTM wants to take a power away from the chief executive, they're going to have to go through charter revision and the voters to diminish the power of the executive. And I thought that was an important principle to place. I thought about it mainly because it's going to be a new altered relationship, and I thought we should make sure the parameters are clear. I do the same thing you'll see in the executive side to make sure that the executive doesn't skirt around the legislative body. Which moves us to Article 4. And a lot of the stuff in 4.1 is already here. I just wanted to go through the formal recitation to make sure that there's a parallel to the legislative body, that this first selectwoman is the chief executive officer of the town. And I left the standard as well as being the town agent. That's currently language that's in the charter. I did add in D, I think A, B, and C are all from the current charter. D is new. One of the conversations I've had, and I think she testified to this, is that there's really no place in the charter that lays out what the chief executive staff rights, privileges are. And what I did is I made a few phone calls, try to get a feel for the size of the office and how it worked, and other offices around the same size. And I went with two different approaches. In the first sentence, that she may appoint, she may not appoint, but if she does appoint a chief of staff, she can also appoint an administrative assistant or equivalent position for which the RTM shall appropriate sufficient funds. So there is a mandatory requirement to make sure that they provide sufficient funds. Can you mandamus it? Everybody knows what a mandamus is, where you can mandate a government action where there's a right to something. Sufficient funds may not be clear enough to make it an absolute strong right, but I think that if you were hiring a chief of staff and you showed the average salary for chiefs of staff in communities of equal size in this part of the state is $100,000 or $80,000 or $70,000, whatever the number is, and the legislative body allocates $15,000, I think you probably would have a fairly strong mandamus case to force the legislative body to pay for your chief of staff. The first selectman may also in the budget have additional staff if it can be budgeted. So the second half of it is that as the it's not the council, it's the RTM may provide, and they all of these people are political appointees. They work for the first selectman, and they serve at her pleasure, basically. In E, what I did was, and I didn't deal with the issue. I talked to a couple of people about this, and I did not deal with the issue of right of rejection on this one, but we might want to talk about that. Is I created the position of chief operating officer. You can call it a chief administrative officer. In the private sector, I think there's a distinction between those types of functions. In the political sector, I think they're used interchangeably. So I will defer to anyone who has broader knowledge of the position than of the concept than I do. And basically, this is a principal managerial aide to the first selectman and performs the duties that are assigned by the first selectman. The person will be an unclassified employee of the town, or typo, and shall be appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the first selectman. And what we have to decide on is whether or not that position is unlike chief of staff, who's a personal assistant, the COO, while still serving at the pleasure of the mayor, of the first selectman, it has to be of a different caliber in terms of the background, the credentials, and you'll see I spent a little time on those credentials, that the person shall have executive experience, administrative experience, qualifications, and knowledge, and such factors, including but not limited to education, municipal and public experience, professional training, et cetera, et cetera. And I've established a whole series of organizations or their equivalents that really establish best practices in the field, from the Government Finance Officers Association to the ICMA. The ICMA is the organization that governs town managers for the most part and city managers for the most part, but also works with towns that are not that don't have city managers, the NLC, et cetera. I also place that the qualifications shall be prepared by the Director of Human Resources. So we have a professional personnel person who will follow the charter in putting the qualifications together. And so that's how I addressed that position. I didn't get into, I've been having this debate over the last 2 or 3 years in different communities, and I have crafted, and I can provide it for you if there's an interest, in very specific responsibilities. As those of you, I think, who heard the Hartford, maybe it was Hartford, whatever it was, no, it was the Hamden testimony. I had one COO and one CAO in, and they were all over the place on whether they thought that there should be prescriptive responsibilities. There's usually catch-alls so that, they can expand the positions if the mayor or first selectman chooses to do so. But I went with a very broad description, and we could tighten that up if you guys are interested. So I do recognize that. Again, 4.2 is a reiteration of current provisions with the deletion of the Board of Selectmen to make sure that the executive authority is clearly vested there, that the first selectman has oversight over all appointees and departments. When you go to 4.2A1, this is a section I wanted to talk to you about. Again, we don't have to decide it tonight, but we should think about it. The Board of Selectmen serves a quasi executive function, but also has a quasi legislative function. As I said a few moments ago, in Fairfield, it is not well defined as a legislative function. They do serve some functions. In other communities, many of the powers I laid out for you as a legislative function are given to boards of selectmen. And those are holdovers from the era when there was a town meeting and not an RTM, so that you couldn't rely on an amorphous group of citizens to be available to help approve a contract, a multi-year contract for that example, or buying real estate or whatever it might be. And so boards of selectmen have that kind of authority. The second sentence is really a legislative function and not an executive function. And that is that the selectmen shall have the power to investigate any and all town offices, departments, and agencies of the town, and for such purpose shall have the power to issue subpoenas. Now, that is a special act authority that was granted to the Board of Selectmen at some point in our history. Let me take a look here. At least as 1947, 1956, and 1956. It's in those two special acts, and it probably precedes those special acts. And the question would be whether to eliminate that, get rid of it, or shift it over to the RTM. So that's a power equation question that you're going to need to think about, because it is a more typical legislative function. The mayor doesn't need to have a subpoena. The first select woman doesn't need a subpoena to get people to cooperate. She has other levers of authority to make sure that people cooperate with her. This was this is from the era, as I said, at the town meeting, and you have all these elected entities. One of the problems that first selectmen face in communities that don't have charters is that the Planning and Zoning Commission may just as well say to the first selectman, we're preparing our budget, we're sending it to the Board of Finance, we really don't care about your budget because you're operating under the general statutes, and good luck to you. Well, the first selectman in that case would love to have a subpoena and doesn't have it. So I just wanted to highlight that section for you. The first selectman will have the sole authority to review the budgets and present them as in Article 10. And then I went through and again laid out the duties. And again, I went to the various communities. I won't go through each one of them. You'll see the underlined sections are new. The current responsibilities are not underlined. But so there's a lot of new provisions. I wanted to make it clear what the executive functions were, and added a few things here, some reporting requirements that don't exist right now. I added the veto authority if we determine that we want to go there. The submission of the budget to the Board of Finance. An annual report. I don't know if you do that informally, but if you do, I put it down as a charter function. I saw that in a lot of communities of similar size. I hope the first selectman won't be angry at me for giving her some homework in that regard. The nominations for town boards and commissions. By the way, the right of rejection that I've put in to the RTM is only for boards and commissions. I thought that in a first run at this, that would be a very good way of testing the process, how it works, before we go into anything more than that. Maybe the COO might be an exception to that, but the idea right now is that it's just the boards and commissions. Remember, a lot of the department heads come from boards and commissions where the mayor assents to their hiring, and so it would be really I made a judgment call on it, and you could again we're in a remote meeting, so you could throw anything you'd like at the screen. I made a judgment call that in the structure that we have, that would be a mile too far. That's my recommendation. That's my thought on it. I wanted to talk about the item number 17. Let's go over that for 1 second, because that's new. That chief executive officers, whether they're mayors or first selectmen or town managers, do not have the authority to bind a community for multiple years. The way it's dealt with in capital budgets very often is when bonding resolutions are adopted by the legislative body, they sometimes give authority to enter into contracts that are consistent with the term of the bond. And therefore, they have granted the authority. So you don't come back every time there's a school project to get authority to sign a construction contract for 5 years or 3 years or 2 years. You do it in the bond item. If there is money in the budget within a department, the executive should have authority to enter into a contract for 1 year or less that goes through a bid process without going anywhere. Is the general rule in the way things are done. What I did here is put a standard in that if there's, any contract that's in excess of the funds appropriated in any category in the annual town budget, meaning that it's not there, and there's a transfer to make it happen, or if it's in excess of $100,000 and it's exempted from competitive procurement and solicitation requirements of the charter or ordinances. I don't think we have any competitive procurement. Normally, that's an area that I spend a lot of time on, but we're doing a lot of different things in this charter. Then it has to go to the legislative body, but the RTM can raise the threshold, and the provision does not apply to emergency transactions if we create a section on emergency transactions. So we have to think about that as well. And then the last clause, which is the most important one to me, is they can't enter into a contract which will fall in multiple fiscal years or continue for a period of more than 12 months. So it's which would probably be multiple fiscal years. A lot of people try to get around that by doing contracts with options. I've made determinations that an option is a circumvention. So if you have a contract with an option and you just renew it every year for 1 year, and the legislative body finds out about it, it would be problematic in my perspective. So I wanted to lay that out, whether you buy that in its entirety. I'll talk to Jim about it. I'll be interested in the lawyers' views on this commission. I wanted to make sure that principle was clear. And again, that clearly lays out a fairly broad authority for the relationship between the mayor and the RTM. You'll see in footnote, in comment number 50 on the side, the current provision that is in there that is a Board of Selectmen power, which is a little different, but it's the same principle involved. Appointment authority, the mayor would now, the first selectman would now have all appointment authority all appointment authority for all boards and commissions, because the Board of Selectmen goes away in terms of that ability. The reorganization of departments is currently a provision in the charter. Next section on, the designation, I didn't, one second, Lauren, I am at a meeting, okay? My daughter is out in Ohio, I just told her I'm at a meeting. The designation of acting first selectman, if we don't have a Board of Selectmen, that's an issue that we're gonna have to talk about, succession. If the first selectman is not available, who is the acting first selectman? If we don't have somebody available, it's usually somebody in a line of succession. Could be the moderator. Sometimes it's the president of the legislative body, the presiding officer of the legislative body. So we need to grapple with that issue because right now it's somebody on the Board of Selectmen. 4.3 is currently in there. 4.4 and 5 are also currently in the document. Article 5 are the other we're almost at the end, folks, are the other elected officials. We're not really doing much with the town clerk. So I don't think there are any changes there. I think those are all recodifications. We have to figure out what we're going to do in 5.2 with our constables. Did we decide we're leaving all 7? I'm trying to remember. I don't think we've taken a formal action, but we'll have to take a formal action here, and the same is true of the JPs. Those are the only issues there. And finally, not a lot of changes in this section, but in this section, we will have to talk in this section I do make references in this section in each of the bodies. I didn't change anything substantive with anybody. Board of Education is exactly as it is today. The only change I put in is I made sure it was clear there were staggered terms set forth in, and I refer back to the section to Article 2. I do the same with staggered terms with the Board of Finance. I didn't change the number. I know there's been some discussion about that. The same with the Board of Assessment Appeals and Town Planning and Zoning and ZBA. There are no substantive changes. I wanted to make sure that when the public looks at the power, they can go back to that front section and see when those elections occur. We may want to look at, I know that that people are interested in the Board of Education elections and how they're done mechanically. So this would be the time as we debate this section to kind of come to grips with that. So let me see if there's a way. There's nothing really to summarize because this was the summary version of it. I tried to create a structure that retains the current attributes of the two principal entities that we've addressed, eliminates the third, and tries to create a balance, but tries to do it in a way that is respectful of the diverse culture, the diverse elective culture that you have in Fairfield, is a better way to put it, where you have a lot of elected entities. And so we didn't touch a lot of those entities. We really focused on three. And I hope I captured, I guarantee that I didn't capture everything you wanted or didn't lay it out the way you wanted, but I think I captured most of the concepts we talked about, I hope. Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Well, it's a lot. Great. Thank you. Very comprehensive. And so there's a lot to kind of digest and go over here. I'm not sure the best way to do it tonight. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to go through kind of section by section and have discussions. Do you have a suggestion as to how you thought this would play out this evening? Or were you looking for this John Matola, do you have as a comment?
Now, first of all, thank you very much, Steve, for this work. And I guess what I was going to say, Brian, is I think we all need some time to really review this and digest it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot here, and it's a lot of good work, and I actually kind of want to look at other parts of the charter that you really didn't touch, Steve, to see how I think I have some questions about the Board of Finance's role now with respect to the new RTM powers and provisions, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do any real deep dives tonight. So I have some general feelings about certain things that I don't know if people want to just generally speak about general things about this, but that's kind of my thought process right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I guess I have a couple thoughts. So I don't want to lose a whole working meeting though by just kind of hearing the presentation. Right. So maybe there are some kind of, and I know we have another item, but maybe there are some smaller issues we can make some decisions on. But also, I'm wondering if it might make sense to schedule kind of a special meeting as a follow-up to discuss what has been presented to us. And I don't look forward to trying to schedule one with the history of doing that. But Steve,
remember we reserved the 31st of March was a reserved date, which is next Thursday. So I don't know if you want to do that.
That's not. That can't work, guys. That's the budget vote that night.
All right.
And it's just
very good.
Can't miss that.
It was just clear in my calendar because I kept it clear for you guys. So the other option, I hate to raise this with you. I have one commission that does this already, so I'll have to be careful. Is to see if you want to have a Saturday session, a roll up your sleeve Saturday session.
Yeah.
and just really think about, it's public. We have to do the same things that we have to do here. But a session where we can just really go through it. And I might even suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you invite, John's going to look at the Board of Finance stuff, and he should, but we might want to invite people from some of the other entities, from the RTM, leadership of the RTM, to take a look at it, because we're running out of time. We're going to be in a
Yeah,
very,
no,
very,
that's what I'm concerned with, is that
Yeah.
we're not, I mean, we are making progress and there's a lot of great work here, but we are up against the clock and I'm worried about running out of time. I think that that's a good point of bringing in some, like, the leadership or key individuals from the RTM and maybe the Board of Finance as well. What do other members think about that? Let's just talk about kind of an additional meeting, perhaps on a Saturday.
Brian, is our next regular meeting 2 weeks from tonight?
Yeah,
So is there any way we could I know, can we do maybe a Tuesday meeting? And, 2 weeks from this past Tuesday, maybe do a Tuesday and Thursday meeting for that week? Just a thought there. I don't know if Steve's available or the rest of the members. I don't even know if I'm available, but it's just a thought.
your next meeting's not till the 14th, by the way.
Of April?
Yeah.
Well, that's a long ways away. We should
Yeah,
meet
because we
before
have that 31st in there.
We need to do something. I'm really worried we're burning down the clock. Like, there's a lot of work to do here. I'd like to continue to go through the document tonight and at least give some kind of feedback. And I'll clear my schedule out for next week if we need to. The only day I can't do next week is Wednesday for me personally, and John obviously needs to be at his budget vote on Thursday.
what about a
the
Saturday
following
morning?
week? Can we meet?
Yeah,
Which Saturday?
only, a Saturday would actually work out better. I can't
Okay.
either Tuesday or Wednesday next week.
There's this Saturday, but remember Saturday the 9th is the weekend of Easter and Passover, I think.
How about April 2nd, a Saturday?
April 2nd is a Saturday.
It is, yeah.
I will not be able to make that. I have a funeral to go to.
Sorry.
What about Monday the 28th?
No, next week is horrible for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Board of Finance too, Pam. It's a big budget week. And
Yeah,
what
okay.
about April 4th? It's a Monday.
I can do April
Or that
4th.
whole week of April 4th. I mean, we have that would be the week before our 14th meeting. We can do something that week. If
Yeah,
anybody
I can
has
do Monday
the
or
time.
Tuesday that week.
What day?
I can do Monday or Tuesday that week.
I happen to
The
be,
4th or 5th.
I'm clear Monday and Tuesday that week as well.
Good for me.
Tuesday would be better for me personally.
Yeah, and I can't do Tuesday, but I might be able to do Monday. Well, I've been following along via YouTube now a couple of times. I can keep doing it. I will tell you before I forget to just mention it, Attorney Mednick, having listened to the session last week, I think you just thread the needle about as expertly as
Yeah.
I could imagine in putting your recommendations together. I just wanted to thank you. That's all.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
I agree. Pam, so
So we take
Tuesday
it-
can't work for you? Oh wait, Monday can't work for you, Pam?
No,
Is
no, Monday's fine. Tuesday would be better, but if everybody can make it on the Monday, then I just won't go to my Monday night meeting.
How about John Wynn? Are you? Oh, good. And Marlene, did she join?
Not here yet.
So we're looking at Monday the 4th?
We are.
Good. And remember, we still have other things we have to tackle.
But we're not done tonight. No, I know, but
Yeah, got you.
I will try and check with Marlene by text right now while we continue.
oh, thank you, John. That's helpful. Okay, so tentatively Monday the 4th, for a special meeting to discuss this. Now, in terms of tonight, you know, do you want to go through number 2, Steve, and then we can, I hear what you're saying, Pam, about taking, beginning to start some comments, but it's kind of like, I agree with John that maybe it does take some more time to kind of digest this and mature our thoughts rather than just give some kind of off the cuff reactions and,
No, that's fine. And to be honest with you, I didn't even realize that April 4th was next week. So you
Yeah.
said April, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
the scary
This
part.
is scary, kids. We're in scary territory. Can I suggest something else, Mr. Chairman? And I want to be careful about this recommendation because I don't want to end up with an FOI violation. But as you are reading through and as you are formulating your thoughts, if you want to send emails to either me or Brian or Chris as vice chair, or Marlene, or to everybody, I guess. Yeah, you send them to everybody, but I don't want you to engage in debate. I simply want you to lay out your views. No one should respond to somebody else's views because that becomes debate and we end up in FOI Hades. And so I want to be careful about that. So as you're doing it, as issues come up, if there are things I missed or there are things that need to be clarified, let's try to get a jump on our next meeting with your concepts as you're going through it. That would be my recommendation, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
It is okay with me, and I would represent to the public that we will give a recap of any such emails that do kind of take place, that, for any substance.
Yeah. So don't put
changes.
anything in that you don't want disclosed.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, quite frankly, it'll all be reflected and, it's kind of helping you work the document a little more before the meeting. And so that'll be reflected by the time we meet again on the 4th. But, it's to just underscore the fact that we're not trying to subvert the process.
Just a clarification on that, if I can, Mr. Chair, and
Sure.
Attorney Mednick as well. If one or two of us have a reason to kind of amongst a smaller group debate and explore and expand to help develop our own thinking on it, that would be okay, but avoid a large scale entire CRC type of email communication.
No quorum.
No quorum, exactly.
No quorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
No
good.
quorum. So if people want to have discussions, I would encourage it, but no quorum.
Okay.
Okay, so where are we meeting for drinks? Sorry,
What's that?
it's a bad joke. I said, so where are we meeting for drinks?
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, so the 4th. So then for tonight, Steve, you have discussion of remaining agenda and a common grid update. And then did you have some smaller issues that we could discuss? Maybe we could agree by a vote of the body to take up some new business that's not on the agenda.
I didn't have any small issues. What I will do is I will go through, we have three major things left. We have all the department stuff, department issues, for-cause standard, et cetera, town attorney, boards and commissions. I will go through those and see if I can distill them down into lists to see whether or not they, any of them really put themselves in a place where we can deal with them in kind of a yes or no format for our next meeting when we discuss this issue. I mean, we still have the month of April. We have to start thinking about when our public hearing is going to be in May. And I'll talk to Jim Baldwin and the first selectman about setting up the time for where we pass the ball over to the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to try to push it as far out as I can in May, but I want to make sure that they will agree that they're not going to take their full 60 days, because if they do, we're in trouble. We'll have to give it to them earlier in May. I think we'll get cooperation from the first select woman and board to make sure we can move this thing back and forth if we have to. And keep in mind, there may be things you may be resuming again in late June or early July, because I think it's very likely, in light of the lateness of tackling some of these issues, that there will be open issues. Hopefully we'll keep them very narrow, but there's that possibility. So I would have as many discussions as you can with people from the different bodies, different parties, to see if you can start getting a feel for whether there's a potential for common ground to come up with something significant here.
All right, well, I mean, tonight, for instance, I'm looking at our work plan from back in January. We were going to discuss department issues, terms of office for department officials and board and commission members, and police and fire and conservation and tax. Is that something that we're kicking out? I mean, maybe we could just kind of do a check on where we are in terms of our schedule and what we've got to, how far off schedule we are, I guess is my question, so that we are kind of being real with ourselves.
So if you look at your grid, which I handed out again today for the first time in 4 months, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to tackle, or let's deal with departments first. Let's see where the departments.
So what are you looking at? You're looking at the.
Well, I'm looking at the thing I sent out to you again today. It has all the new public comments that from December on.
Yeah, that was a lot of
and
work.
all
Thank
the
you very
others.
much.
And I'm looking at page 21 of that document, which brings us into, just a lot of, there's so many things we knew we were never going to get to. And the real question is, are we going to be able to tackle all of these things? It's going to be very, very difficult. It seems to me there are a lot of issues on planning and zoning, cemetery commission, separating the Conservation Commission from the Inland Wetlands Commission. That actually came up in a more recent comment as well. Merger of the Police and Fire Commission. There's a lot of very substantive concepts that that even if we started tackling them in October, we might not have gotten to all the department issues. So there may be a lot of issues that will not be tackled. I think I would suggest that you all go through these to see if there's anything that strikes you as issues that we should be trying to address in the last few weeks of this process.
I know for myself with the police and fire, the only thing I was interested in pursuing was removing the residency requirement.
For the chiefs.
Correct.
Yeah, that's easy.
Other than that, I'm personally good with everything else that's in there. I don't have any issues with planning and zoning. I don't feel compelled to change anything with conservation. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I'm fine moving on from all of that stuff.
I would just be,
Steve,
if I might.
I'm sorry, John.
No, John, please, John Matola, please go ahead.
I apologize. And for just Steve, for we've gotten some requests that we put certain commissions in the charter and create them, but that's something that can be done by ordinance, by an RTM, right? So
exactly.
As long as the public is aware of that, I don't think we have to deal with that.
Yeah, I've had discussions. I think I probably told you my general philosophy at the beginning. I think you should minimize the number of boards and commissions in a charter.
Right.
Because the disadvantage of being in the charter is that you can only change the body in a charter revision. And so one of the things I've gotten some of my communities to do, and look, the elected commissions have to be in the charter. They need to be in the charter. There are some critical commissions, police commission, fire commission. If you had civil service, a civil service commission, that should be constitutional commissions. They're really central to the core operations of the city. But then you have a second level of important commissions, and none of them are unimportant, that you may want to name in the charter and say that there shall be an X commission, a Y commission, a Z commission, and then leave it to the legislative body and the first selectman to create the ordinance establishing the entity. They have to do it, but it's not defined in the charter. And the way, and again, do we have time for this? Maybe, I don't know, but it may be problematic if you're looking at 10 or 15 commissions that are in the charter and you want to move them out of the charter. What I normally do if I'm doing something like that, just want to give you a concept, is I set up a sunset chapter, a sunset article. So all of those boards and commissions that we're moving out of the charter remain in the charter until their new entity is adopted. So it never goes away. They retain their vibrancy, they retain the current composition, and the expectation would be that it would be an easy fix for the legislative body and the first selectman to simply move them out in their current form, unless there's some nefarious activity going on. It would seem to me they would move in that direction. But they don't go out of business until the new replacement ordinance commission is created. Then the sunset, that's how the sunset takes place. Then Jim Baldwin will order the printers, the publishers to take that section out of the charter where the commission is set up. They're gone from the charter at that point, but they stay in the charter until their replacement is in the field. So that's one way to do it. But you might be able to accommodate some of the new entities that want to be named in the charter because they think that they should be. But I would always try to advise anybody who wants to come into the charter to understand that they're going to be frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
I've just heard from Marlene Batista. She can make an April 4th evening meeting, so I think we have the full collection of the group. I did have a comment or reaction to the point that Pam and John Matola were making about removing the residency requirement for the two chiefs. And I am not sold on that, and I just want to express my opinion on it. I'm not firm that it needs to remain in there, but I would like to have it better and further explored as to what the real implications of that are. Because some of the discussion that we've seen from the feedback was just have a location requirement, but that location requirement, you could actually wind up having someone living in a different state or across Long Island Sound, and they would meet the geographic requirement. But I would like to have it explored and better defined before we decide to eliminate it. Just an observation on that.
Yeah, I think the chairman of the police commission had sent language in that said within a certain geographical distance of the town.
Right, but that geographic distance, I thought you could have someone living in New York, down towards New York City, or even across Long Island Sound into Long Island. So I'd like to better define it for Connecticut purposes than that.
Can I ask a question about this? Is this being done because a particular person wants it done, or because they think it's generally a good policy?
It used to be that it's a requirement in the charter, but guess what? They don't live here. And the last chief didn't, and this chief doesn't. We've just sort of let it waive.
Because, I mean, aren't you better off coming up with a waiver standard? Or enforcing the provision? Is there a reason why people haven't moved into town? Or the town may just not feel it's necessary. I mean, that's what you have to decide. But don't do it for an individual. Do it only.
No, this is definitely not for an individual. We're just not following it. So it's sort of one of these things. Why do we have it if we're not even going to follow it? If you think it's better to have a waiver in there and allow them to waive it, then do that. It's archaic, honestly.
Hence the reason I'd like to explore it further. I wasn't aware that they were not actually living here as part of and complying with the requirements. So, I just think clarifying that would be good. And a waiver I probably would be okay with, but it would be a conscious decision rather than an offhand removal of it from the charter.
So
All right,
keep the
so
issue.
Steve, you said you were gonna come up, you could do some lists, so we could do just kind of, so that would be kind of post our,
Yeah,
I
I'm looking
think
at
that,
the
okay,
meeting of
let's
the
do this.
14th. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do
But
this. Why don't
do
you
we
come
need-
up?
For
Sorry.
John's purposes, do we need somebody, an advocate? Or what are you looking for to get more information?
I think I
want any more.
understand, Steve, I can talk with you offline. I think I understand a number of the comments that have come in and John and Pam's points that we've been discussing and come up with some ideas.
All right.
I
I'll
think
put it
this is
down.
what, I think
Yeah.
this is what we need to do, though. I think for stuff like that, I think we need to develop a list of kind of decisions that need to be made on really more specific or, I mean, less, not large substantive issues that we need to discuss that will not take a lot of time. If we narrow it down to a list and that's distributed well in advance, at least a week in advance, so that we can consider the items and then come to a meeting and have a brief discussion and make a decision on them. Also, in the time frame between the time of getting that list and the meeting that we have, which would probably be the 14th, you can submit questions or ask Steve or any, attendant, part of town government that is able to respond for more information so that you're better prepared and we are better prepared to make those decisions. Does that sound like a good plan for those types of items?
That makes
Well,
great sense.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. It's just we keep saying we're going to do that, and then we just don't get to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to just, we have a chart in front of us. Let's just run through it. Do we want to eliminate the terms for appointed? I mean, should the BAA be appointed? No, that's off the list. Is the EBA appointed? No, it's off the list. There was an issue with the Harbor Commission, and that was that.
Where are you reading
with the
from?
ordinance.
The grid, Pam?
From the grid.
Okay. So do you want to go through the grid and make the list now and then?
Yes, because we have to start doing stuff.
Okay. What does anyone have? Oh gosh, where did it go? Comments about?
Page you on, Pam?
I'm using that grid that Marlene sent very late today.
Right, and is page
Like
number.
you could see it on my phone.
What page are you on?
I just opened it, the very
Oh.
first page.
Okay.
Oh, you're on the most recent ones, yeah.
Yeah. The thing she sent today at 4:22 p.m.
Yeah,
Sent two
that's
things,
the list
right?
I gave her today, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the issues tracking chart?
Yes.
Yeah.
Public
that-
comment log 2022.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, these are the most recent ones. The body of them are behind this. It's a big document.
It is.
Yeah.
So why don't we do it this way? Going back to my and going back to my other comment, maybe everybody should look at this and in the next 3 or 4 days, get to me the items that you see on this list that you think should be dealt with on our meeting on the 14th. And let's try to do it the next few days and we'll notice it. I'll go through it as well to see if I pick up things that you guys don't pick up and try to put together a comprehensive list. We could do it now if you want, but
I just want to make sure what we're talking about, because
Yeah.
are we talking about going through every single resident's comment and responding to each point?
I
feel like we did this to get to the work plan. I mean,
yeah, the work plan should be it. If you go look at our calendar, at our work
Right.
plan,
That's what I
we
thought.
should have tonight, here's what we should have done tonight. We should have been looking at department issues, terms of office for department officials, board and commission members. DPW, WPCA alignment was an issue that we had kept alive because we went through the grid.
Okay.
Police, fire, conservation, and tax, and Board of Education. These things were all laid out in that list. At the next meeting, again, department issues, qualifications, four-course
Yeah.
standard, the assistant town attorney issue, and then the CFO. We've kind of dealt with the CFO or the CAO or COO already. And then the last meeting is going to be boards and commissions. So if I take those,
Oh, I
can then
see.
look.
I'm sorry.
You see my point? Because that's what we did. That's when we created it. Remember, we took.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
well,
yeah. We're not
yeah.
gonna work from the grid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did
yeah.
that.
No, that makes sense.
And so what I'll do is I'll go through it, draw up the list, see what sections they refer to, so we can look at the charter and see if we can knock them out. Because I'm going to tell you something, we're going to be consumed with this structural issue for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
This is it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, John.
Because there's going to be a lot of interplay. There has to be interplay with other people during the next 2 or 3 weeks to try to really tighten up the governance issue. And I don't want to diminish anything because I think you've done other stuff. We've done the budget. There's been a lot of stuff that's been dealt with, but you're tackling a big issue with structure and reorganization. And I just want to say one last thing. So let's not think we haven't done anything. When you see the charter, which I hope to have to you by mid-April, once we tackle governance, we start putting it in. Maybe after our April 4th meeting, we'll be far enough along where I can actually put the stuff into the body of the document. When you see the document, it's going to look very different than the charter that we have in town today. There's a lot of structural things that have been done to simplify it, to make it more user-friendly. And sometimes I have to tell you, if that's all you did, that's not a bad thing. But right now you're tackling the big governance issue. And if you get that done, that's a big deal. And I think we can tackle all these other issues. And I don't want to forget Pam's issue on the Board of Education, but that's really part of these sections as well. So let's be ready to discuss that at the next meeting. So I'll draw up the list for the 14th.
No, the list is drawn up. Like this is.
Yeah, I got you.
You're right. This is it. It's you know, and to your point, John, like this new charter is really, you know, this new document from tonight is really the meat of what we have ahead of us. But you know, if we can eliminate that's a bad word. If we can accomplish some of the smaller things in the meantime or as well, that'd be helpful. And they've been narrowed down here. They're at kind of the tip of our tongue. If you just refer back to this work plan on pages like 6, pages 6 on, you know, miscellaneous issues part A, and then department issues. Like this is everything that's left to do, page 6 through 9.
So I'll try for both the meeting on the 4th and the 14th is maybe we'll set aside time at both meetings for some of these miscellaneous items. We can, you know, you get tired of discussing governance, we can maybe knock some stuff out as well at both those meetings. Do we want to invite anybody else to be at the meeting on the 4th? Is the question.
No.
Just us. All right,
No.
good.
Yes. Correct.
Gotcha.
I do think, though, I mean, and I appreciate you doing that, Steve, to, you know, kind of isolate some of those minor things, but I do think that we should all be prepared to discuss them so that, to like John Wynn's point, you know, let's have you do your own homework and due diligence to have the discussion on whether or not, you know, the police chief and fire chief need to be an elector. And if not, you know, what's the geographical distance, and do we want to make sure there's a state residency requirement, you know, stuff like that. But director of health, tree warden, tax collector. I mean, all these things are. We did all this work. You did all this work, Steve, in assembling this grid based on everything we heard, and this is what it's been, you know.
Exactly.
Condensed to. And so really at this point it's pretty, you know, it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't consider these very narrow issues that have been isolated in these few pages.
Does everybody have the work plan available, or should we send it out again?
I would say send it out again. I was just thinking that exact point. I think I located it, but to make sure we all have a common baseline, if we could send that out again, that would be
All right, I'll
great.
share it with Marlene and Prue.
I mean, I think it's the one from the January 13th backup.
Exactly, I'm looking at it right now.
Yes, that's the one I located as well, but I didn't know if there was a further update after
Let's
that.
make sure we're all working with the same document. I'll have.
If I'm not mistaken, though, Steve, I think in what you presented tonight, you covered most of the articles that have a lot of this stuff in it. And then the boards and commission is the next big one. And then there's these other things that are sort of floating around, which I didn't think were a huge number. I agree with you, Brian. We need to nail them down, but it should be a manageable task, I think.
Yeah. That's what I'm glad. And I'm sorry.
I think we can get these things done. I'm pretty confident. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for looking at the work plan. I wasn't looking, I was just looking at the schedule. But it is laid out. I don't have to do a thing. Thank you.
No. Yeah.
Good. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves there, Steve.
There will be other things I have to do, John. I get it.
Okay.
I understand.
All right. So that's what we'll how are we leaving these miscellaneous items though, Steve? We're gonna resend the work plan, and people are gonna focus on topics, starting meeting topic, department issues on page 7.
Yeah, I think so. Let me try to integrate it into the next two meetings or 3 meetings, and lay it out that way. I'll try to do that. I can't do it. I got a deadline tomorrow, the beginning of next week. Let me try to get it out to everybody.
Okay.
I'll just take
that'll be like the little list. Yeah, and so thank you. And it should really just
lift it out,
be
put it
putting
into
and
our
pasting.
calendar.
It just be taking what's here, not redeveloping anything.
I'm not going to write a new thing. It'll just be, I'm just going to basically give Marlene, in essence, the agendas and break it down into agenda fashion. Then at this meeting, we're going to deal with these 4 issues, this one, these 5 issues, whatever. And make sure to Chris's point that some of the things that are already in this pretty comprehensive thing from chapters 2 to 6 and 11, that if there's any redundancy, we can take them off this list because it's already in this document that we're addressing.
No, I see though. Yeah, okay. But I mean, not the whole thing, just starting with page 7, those department issues and going forward. All right.
Gotcha.
And then in terms of, so that's good. So the 4th, we're going to go over the document that we received tonight and you reviewed and gave us that. Thank you again. That was wonderful. If we want to take, the rest, another half hour and kind of get some initial comments, I'm happy with that. If we want to just kind of, if we could, might give us some ideas for some marching orders, or we can, dare I say, adjourn early, but as we've laid out how much work we have to do and how far behind schedule we are. What is the group sense? Pam, did you want to go through a few things?
They're not like a substance things that I think like are like that we would get into a debate on, but for example, like just the issue where we have the date of the town, not the terms of office. Hold on one second. Where you fixed the start of the term to the 3rd Monday after November, does that solve the town clerk's issue of there being no more confusion about when we get sworn in anymore?
I think the swearing in is on page 5, subsection C.
Yeah.
And
yeah, C1. You write on the
C1
3rd
is the
Monday in November.
Monday in November after their election.
Like you made a notation that you included the RTM, but the problem really wasn't the RTM. The problem was there was confusion on when that was supposed to be. So does that fix this? And it
I didn't
conflicted
change
with.
the thing, I just reorganized it, so I didn't change it.
Sure. So there was an issue that Betsy raised with the Betsy Brown being the town clerk, because there's also a provision in the charter that says when organizational meetings have to be held. And the
Yes.
date for the swearing in and then the organizational meeting, there
I
was
see.
conflict.
Yeah, the organizational meeting would be for the council or the RTM.
No, it's not just it's all our boards and commissions are supposed to hold. We have a line in the charter that says all boards and commissions are to hold their organizational meeting at a certain time. So I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't know that just saying the third Monday in November fixes the problem.
Let's take a quick look here.
I mean, this is this is an example, Brian. For me personally, I think we could probably get clarification on.
Yeah,
Nobody really has to go build consensus on this.
The organizational meeting is held in the month of December. So what's the problem if they get sworn in?
I guess because we were getting sworn at the end of November, so I was just making sure that this November 3rd, the third Monday, fixes whatever can we check with the town clerk that this fixes whatever the issue? I guess that's the short answer. That's the short statement.
This is Jim Baldwin. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the short answer, Pam, is that yes, it does. The confusion was, is it the third Monday after their election could be the fourth Monday of the month, which I believe is the organizational meeting of the RTM, and that caused problems.
Yeah.
And in the past, it was set up so that it was the third Monday anyway, and it was kind of disregarded, and it raised some questions. But it's a very simple fix. It's a very simple fix just to say the third Monday in November, because we all know that's after they've been elected. It's just not necessarily the third Monday after they've been elected, and there's no real other reason for it. It might have just been poor wording.
So delete the clause
draft.
after the election.
You don't have to say after the election, because the third Monday in November is definitively after the election.
I agree. It's out. I'll take it out.
Okay, cool. So that was that was just a question I had.
Good.
Well, maybe you should say in the year they were elected, though, or something. That's why it's there. So it's because that's the section is commencement of date. I see. That's probably why they had that in there.
And then for this Board of Ed thing, did you have any suggestions for us to think about?
Can we talk about that for 1 second?
Yeah.
So the Board of Ed has 2 cycles, and they have 5 elected in the 23 cycle, just going forward, and 4 elected in the 25 cycle for 4-year term. And the way it's addressed here is that when there are 5, or the year where there's 4, let's see here. So when they're an election year when 4 candidates are elected, or more than 3 candidates in a year in the 5, so they can only nominate, each party can only nominate no more than 2 candidates when 4 are running. I see the problem, because you have an even number. That's the problem. Is that the year you have the problem with the even numbered year, and therefore there's no competition? Because the parties are just nominating?
That's it, right, Pam?
Is that the issue? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, when you have, yes, it's the year when we have 4, we have a problem, there's no competition.
It's not a year when you have 5, because both parties will nominate, but there's that one seat that somebody's going to get.
Correct.
Well, the other way to do it, frankly, is if you want to make it competitive, in a year where there's 4 and you're still complying with minority party representation, I think, I have to look at it, is no party can nominate more than 3. And no party can have more than 3. So, you know, so you can have a 3-to-1 cycle. Right now, you end up in parity in all likelihood, the way it's set up. So the issue is you're not getting competition because everybody is limited to the number that can win.
Correct.
Right.
All right. Now I understand it at least.
Yeah. You had language somewhere in here, Steve, that talks about the majority for the Board of Ed for minority representation would be 6-3, and you kind of spelled out, I can't find it right now, how that would work.
I did the memo. See, the other thing is, do you have a situation, have you ever had a situation where the alignment was off because of the election? But I guess you can't, because both elections guarantee that you'll probably have an alignment that works when the whole body comes together, because the minority party representation has to work for the entire body, not just for an election cycle. Have you ever had a problem where you didn't meet minority party standards?
No. The way this is, no, we have not had that problem to my knowledge. The way this is structured, it's structured so that the minority representation is a 5-4 board.
All the time.
All the time. You can never switch to 6-3, except if someone resigns and there's a vacancy, and then you're going to fill that vacancy, then the board could flip 6-3.
Why is that? Because who appoints the vacancy, or is there an election?
There's an election.
There's an appointment, then an election, right, Pam?
Right.
Correct.
So
There's an
yes.
There's an appointment, and then at the next municipal cycle, there's an election. So you're putting a seat on the. If it's in that even year, then you're making it 5 seats instead of 4.
Gotcha. So, but the issue isn't an inability to meet minority party representation.
No, that's not the issue.
Low voter turnout
competition.
because there's no competitive election.
Correct.
Right.
Right. That I did not understand completely. I'm glad. Let me see what I can do.
Like, I don't know how to fix it. I tried to do it on paper. I was like, is it better if we go to 7 people? But then I think I don't think that fixes it. Is one of them a 2-year term? I honestly do not know how to fix this.
Have you thought about breaking the Board of Education into districts?
No.
No.
I don't know. All right, just throw things at me. You can throw things at me until we meet in person. Let me look at it and see if I can come up with something.
I was looking for your infinite wisdom on this.
Well, I didn't play it because I really wanted to go through it in a public way to figure out exactly what the problem is. Now I think I understand.
Yeah, that's the exact problem. We don't have a minority representation issue. We have a no voter choice issue.
One of my towns has a 4-year. Hartford has a 4-member cycle. Let me see how we dealt with it.
I think this happened, Pam, when the last charter revision, they changed it from 6 years to 4 years. And somehow it screwed it all up. I don't know,
Yeah.
Is that why we don't have the same issue with the Board of Finance?
No, because they're on 6-year terms.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back to 6-year terms. The only thing I can come up with, John, is if they were trying to force it so that the board was always 5-4. That's the only thing I can come up with. I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent, Pam, at the time was they didn't want people to on the Board of Ed to serve the 6 years because people thought that was too long. That was it.
Right. Got it.
So I have a bunch of nits. I don't know if anyone else has anything of substance. I'm happy to try and go through the nits that I observed as we went through the document.
You can send them to me privately so you don't embarrass me publicly.
I wouldn't be embarrassing you. I'd be embarrassing me, if anything. But
That's okay. I'm just joking.
so you want me to try and run through them, or?
Sure, we can see how that goes.
Okay, so section 3.2B, page 13. You say selectmen. I think that probably should be first selectman. So section 3.2B.
You got it.
Okay. Section 3.4A on page 17.
3.4. Give me that again. 3.4.
3.4A, 4A. It's on page 17.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's you have the moderator appointing the chair of the committees, and I'm curious if the committee members should be electing the officers rather than the moderator appointing the chair of the committee or the officers.
That's how it's done now. The committees elect their own chairperson.
The committee, or all of their officers, not just the chair, I assume.
Correct.
So who appoints the committees? The chair, the moderator?
That we have what's called the Special Legislative Management Committee. It's made up of both Republicans and Democrats. There's 5 members, 3 of the majority party, 2 of the minority party, and they meet and assign the committee's membership. It actually works quite well.
But they assign committee membership, but then that committee elects their officers.
And then the committee goes and they meet and they elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary.
Right. Yes.
That's fine with me. Why don't you, somebody want to lay that out, what they do, how they do it? And
Sure. You want me to send you the language that's in the rules now?
I've got the rules. Send me the, tell me what section.
I'll send you a summary of how we do it right now, and then you could summarize it for the commission.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one I have is on page 17, spilling over to 18, special and emergency meetings.
Yeah.
There's just the top of page 18, there's something typo in there with 10%, or you want to get rid of the percentage sign and numeral 0.
Gotcha.
Okay. Page 24. Page 24, section 3.10. You mentioned council, probably should be RTM.
3.10.
Yep, page 24, 3.10, vacancies in the RTM.
Got it.
So council should probably be RTM.
Yes, sir. I fixed it in another place. Yeah.
Okay. Page 26, your COO position. I'd like to read through it again. A lot of good, adjectives there. A couple that I didn't see that we might consider adding, and I'll read them off and we can figure it out later. Certifications, credentials, accreditation, or licenses. Any of those might be appropriate to have in there at some point or way.
Gotcha.
So certifications, credentials, accreditation, or license.
Got it.
Okay. That's all I note for right now.
Excellent. Thank you. And it's not so bad. I picked up a few as I was going through it, so we'll clean it up. I was looking, while you guys are thinking about the next thing, let me look at Hartford and see how the breakdown works. I know it's a big city, but it's the same concept that applies everywhere. Just take a look at their Board of Ed election. So the way it is done is, well, see, we have appointed and we have elected. So at no part shall more than 3 of the members appointed by the mayor be members of the same political party. Maximum number members from the same political party shall be 3 on the elected side. So the way it is done is they have 4 elected with a max of 3 from one party. And so that's the way you build the competition. That's what I kind of said a few moments ago. They don't spell it out cleanly here, I will tell you. But the way, the maximum number of people from the same party shall be 3 of the 4, which means that both parties can nominate 3, and you're going to have winners and losers in that cycle. Does that help you, Pam?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The way I think it works is you can have up to 3 from the same political party, and both parties get to nominate the maximum number that they can have elected, which is 3. So you break away from the tie notion, and the minority party gets the 1, is what it comes down to, because you can have no more than 3 from one party. If both parties nominate 3, does that get you where you want to be? I don't know.
Both nominate 3.
They both nominate 3. I suppose you could end up in a situation where the top 4 people are still 2 and 2, but it's a competition at least if you're nominating.
Both nominate. So you're kind of doing it like the way we do it for Board of Finance.
Yeah.
I think that works.
Yeah, because you can only nominate
and then
the number. Both parties would nominate the maximum number they can elect, and then there's a 4th person, and so you could end up in a 2-2 tie. But you have competition at least. No one's guaranteed anything because you're going to end up with 6 candidates for 4 seats.
6, 3, and what do we nominate now? 8, right?
I don't know what you would nominate for 4. Yeah, you nominate. Or
Okay,
you're
so
limited
if I
to
vote,
2. I think you're limited to 2 actually. Yeah, you're limited to the 2. You're limited to. You could nominate no more than 2. I think is the way it works.
That's the problem.
no, because 1 year we can nominate all 4. Do you see how overly complicated they made this?
Yeah.
Hold on, what page is that?
Page 6.
See, this is each political party may nominate the full number of candidates to be elected.
Oh, okay. Then why is it not competitive then?
Because each elector may because you can run the 4 people and each party's guaranteed 2 seats.
What if you take the provision that's in the section above it, that no party can nominate more than a bare majority of the persons to be elected, and you allow for 3 to 1 that no party shall have more than 3. Does that get you there? It's kind of what
I think that's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
I can't come up with another way to do it. And then the board goes 6-3.
It could go 6-3. It may not, but at least you have a competitive election.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to write it out to really look at it.
I know.
yeah,
That was me.
let's-
Somewhere in this pile, I have a sheet of paper that has all these little variations, and
now
have
that we've
more
had this
people with
discussion, let me
glassy
play with
eyes.
that language. Let me play with the, now that I think I understand it, let me play with the language and I'll run it by you guys before the
okay.
next meeting.
Thank you.
'Cause,
Thank you.
This kind of
That was
brings,
helpful.
can I ask a question?
Hope everybody else is not
Yeah,
falling asleep.
please.
Well, something it brings to mind, how would an unaffiliated get nominated? I see there's a provision for that in the RTM. I don't recall one for the other elected positions. I could have missed it. Is that covered by state statute?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's why I want to clarify what you guys operate with and how you use it. What I did in, I think I addressed it in the RTM section where I set up.
It was in the
election.
RTM section.
Hold on.
Was it, how about for the other elected positions?
Yeah, if you want to run for the Board of Education, you're not a Democrat or Republican, how do you get the run? You petition on?
Yes,
I believe so.
That's your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's under state statute?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I addressed this somewhere in here.
You did put it in for the RTM.
Yeah, you can petition on, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I did account for that, because in a lot of the communities I represent, you do have vibrant third parties. So the way I addressed it there is minor parties or petitioning parties. Yeah, so he's absolutely right, 3.2A, I forgot about it. So that should probably be a standard provision for all of the elected positions, by the way.
Right.
Okay.
One other nit, if we're still open for nits and nats, and
I'm okay.
okay, page 30, appointment powers, paragraphs 3 and 4. You mentioned advisory boards, commission committees. The actual full slate of entities we have here in town, as I can best detect from our website, is boards, commissions, committees, advisory committees, coalitions, and task forces. I don't know if we want to put all those words in there, maybe parenthetically.
Because, John, what you may not remember, I am going to define boards and commissions in the beginning of the document, and I'll make sure that all of those are repeated there.
Excellent.
And wherever boards and commissions show up, it could be any of those entities.
Very good. I don't want to leave anyone aside, so that's great. Excellent. Thank you.
Good. Which I'm going to be working on next week, and will be on your agenda sometime in April to look at it. So.
Okay. Well, this might be a good kind of point to stop and reconvene on April 4th and go over the document we saw tonight, received today, starting at the top and kind of making our way through it. And that, unless someone else had, you did disagree or have another suggestion, I think that that's how we're going to proceed. I
think
see
that
John kind of agreeing, and John Wynn has something to say. Okay, yeah.
It makes great sense, and I want to thank Attorney Mednick and for all the hard work on this that's getting us organized, and for all the commission members for their thoughtful comments.
Yeah, amazing work, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, it's really well organized. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've got a great commission. I have to work up to your standards. So I try hard.
Everyone is good, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anyone else this evening? Okay, no, I think we are making some great progress, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, see you on the 4th.
Bye-bye.
Bye.